Welcome to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, where we sit down with the people who give shape, texture, and voice to life on the North Fork of Long Island. Some are rooted here by generations, others arrived by chance or choice, but all carry with them a piece of the story. We talk about what's changing, what's worth holding on to, and the currents of history, both quiet and loud, that run through this place. I'm your host, Christopher Bianchi, and for episode 213, we sit down with Billy Hands, Grease Monkey poet, keeper of stories in Orient. He grew up in North Jersey, but his summers belonged to Orient. Long before he moved here full-time in the early 80s, those early seasons shaped him. He learned from the men in his family, a father whose journey ran from the major leagues to the service bay, and a grandfather with a gift for words and an eye for people. And from his mother he inherited something just as lasting, music, feeling, and a way of listening that would one day find its way into his poetry. At the service station, Billy watched the world roll in. Locals, travelers, old-timers, wanderers, each leaving behind a story or a rhythm that stayed with him. Billy forged his own path. He continues to run the Orient Service Center, a place where engines, stories, and the poetry of ordinary days collide. And in his writing, you can hear the echoes of all those influences. Family, summers on the edge of the sea, and the quiet pulse of a community that has shaped him for decades. In this conversation, we talk about his family, community, his father's time in the majors, the characters who drift through small-town life, and the stories and the people of Orient, and the joy Billy finds in those everyday encounters. So I hope you enjoy episode 213 with Billy Hands. This episode was recorded September 14th, 2025. Thank you so much for coming on the Floyd Memorial Library podcast today. It's really great to have you on today.
Well, I appreciate you thinking about me and joining in, with the podcast archives.
Yes.
Yeah, it's great.
Definitely.
Thank you.
And so with many of the other interviews, I usually like to start off, if you can give us a little intro about yourself and where your family roots come from, and eventually making your way out to Orient.
Well, like everybody, a destination, right? Summer places, vacation places. My great-grandparents summered in New Suffolk, and I assume my grandparents also did. I wasn't around then. And probably in the early 50s, they came to Orient, long weekends, eventually summer. And my dad was a summer kid. He fell in love with Orient, and most places that you go to as a vacation spot when you're a kid with your family, there's something about it. Maybe it's because it's not home. Maybe it's because you wish it were home. You wish you had these things at home. Or maybe because it's just different. And so that was my father. Spent the summers here. What everybody did, fishing, clamming on the boat, and friends with local people and other summer kids. That's how I ended up here in the late 60s. My father's occupation was primarily seasonal. So so summertime my family was where my father was.
Okay.
And then when he was through as a professional baseball player, when he was through with the season, he would spend his weekends coming out to Orient and going bass fishing. That's when I first started coming out with him, take a long weekend, just the two of us. Finally, when he retired from baseball, we started spending full summers here, renting houses, that sort of thing. And I had my group of friends, and every summer you come back and hang out with them and do the same things. The boats, water skiing, fishing and clamming. And just as kids, just raising a ruckus in the town. Dirt bikes were always the top thing to do. And and we pushed the envelope like all kids do. And then September would come along and I'd go back to North Jersey, where we lived, and go to school.
Mm-hmm.
It was it was a little bit different, and the same as I think my father before me as a summer kid. My friends, my local friends in Orient. This is going to sound kind of funny. I wanted to be them. And what I mean is, so they had a lifestyle and they did things that I didn't do back home. Now, I wasn't in the city or really the suburbs, but the water, the dirt bikes, that sort of thing. I was enamored by that way of life, and the grass is always greener, type of thing.
Yes,
that was their lifestyle,
mm-hmm.
and I enjoyed being welcomed into that community, into that group of kids, and I wanted that, and and it worked just through the different roads and changes and this and that. And here I am still.
And when you came out in the summer, was that primarily in Orient or?
Yeah, it was always Orient.
Always Orient.
Yeah, it was always Orient. And not the whole summer because, we had other things to do, but the better part of the summer. And I was used to not spending my summer vacation at my home in New Jersey because with my father playing baseball, most of my summers were spent in Chicago or Minnesota, two of the ball clubs that he played for. So it's funny you mentioned that. I didn't realize until I met my wife years later, I wasn't a kid from New Jersey who went down the Jersey Shore because I wasn't there. I didn't hang out with the kids that I went to public school with over the summer. And you know how a lot of times relationships are built over the summer with people, kids you go to school with that maybe you didn't know in school, but out of school during the summer, that's when you start hanging out together. I don't know if I never thought that I was actually missing something until it was pointed out to me. I was like, that's sad that you weren't there. But it's all I knew. That was my lifestyle since I was a kid with my father's job. So, I didn't know any differently. So we'd rent a house or a cottage for the summer in Orient and, go back to Jersey in September. And then the following year, we do it again until my father finally built a house in 1979, just a summer house.
Yes. And you mentioned your grandparents, they initially came out to New Suffolk?
My great-grandparents
Your great-grandparents,
did. So,
okay.
Again, I'm assuming my grandparents, followed followed suit. And something just was a draw for them. Something had them go to Orient.
Yeah.
And that was it. And back then too, you speak with people as far as Airbnbs, people renting homes, that sort of thing. That went on back in the 40s, where people would rent out guest rooms. The house that my grandparents stayed in, when they stayed in the summer, the people who lived in the house would move down into the finished basement. And my grandparents would live upstairs. And it was another way, for revenue. I mean, you always have taxes. You always have a water bill and an electric bill, putting kids through school, whatever. And it worked. So your seasonal rentals are nothing new. The only thing that's changed is the amount of people. And that's why they had to put checks and balances in place with seasonal rentals so that there is some kind of respect in the community from people who are renting here, especially short-term rentals.
But did you get to meet any of your grandparents?
My grandparents, yes.
You did?
Great-grandparents, my grandfather's mom. She passed away, I think, when I was a freshman in high school. Oh, okay. So I knew her. Oh, okay. It's funny. Sometimes things in life come out later. So while we were doing, the summers in Orient, and we never brought up, I knew my grandfather, had spent time here. He had bought a piece of property on Shelter Island, just a vacant lot. Wish I had that now. But you just, sometimes life gets in the way of living. You're just busy doing what you're doing, and you don't think to ask back about, so when did you come out here?
Yes.
You kind of then later
think about it later.
Later, you start to ask questions and you learn about it.
Was that something you had? Did you get the opportunity to ask your father what he thought as a kid coming out here?
He told me stories
about,
and things they did, and not too far removed from what I did. So, if he's out here in hurricanes are always a big thing, right? Weather. 54, I think, was Hurricane Carol, if I'm not mistaken. And he was out here for that as a kid. So he was 14 years old. Ironically, the first hurricane that I went through out here, I was also 14. And that was Hurricane Bell in 76. So now, back then, it seemed like, well, that one was all the way back in 54, and this is 76. That's not that many years. It's a lot of years when you're 14 years old. It's not a lot of years when you're 64 years old. Yeah. So that was, we'd talk about Orient from days of old, if you will. The really neat thing too, talking about the community and coming out here. In the 70s, there were still a number of old timers that obviously have passed on, but the stories and that. So figure if it's 1976, 1978, you've got people living there who were born before the turn of the century. So you're talking about people in 1980, let's say, that were born in 1898, and they're only 82, 81 years old. And I was fortunate enough to be working at the gas station in Orient and interacting with these people and the stories that they told and the funny, quirky things. I said to my daughter, who's 31, I said to her, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, we were talking, I was visiting her, and I said, it's really too bad that the kooky old timers, that used to be here, I said, that they're not here anymore. And she looked at me and she said, Dad, you're that kooky old timer now. And I'm like, thanks a lot. So everything's cyclical. Everything changes. The community has changed, but change is good. You don't have the generations and generations of people in Orient now like you used to, mainly because farming industry, the fishing industry, fin fish as well as shellfish, it's not as profitable. And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yes.
Technology has changed. So I think probably 50 years ago, 60 years ago, it was pretty much written. You went to school, you got done with school, and you worked in the family business. Whether you were a bayman, whether you were a farmer, whether you were a mechanic or delivering oil or whatever, that was pretty much the way it was. And that's one thing, and you can't be upset, you can reminisce, but that's one thing that's happened with the community that's different.
Yes, definitely. But I wanted to go back to your time in school through elementary or middle school, high school. You mentioned you would have to travel a lot and be away.
Right.
But what subjects or What were you interested in at that time? Were you interested in writing and?
I think I always was. My grandfather was a kooky old person, and my grandfather was a musician and a writer. That's not how he made money. He was in the bakery business, actually bakery supply. Vanilla was his thing, and taking that to the different bakers in the city. But he was a fun guy. He was a prankster. He was a joker. And I learned so much from him. So again, when you're a kid, you want to be like people. So not to say I didn't want to be like my dad, but I wanted to be like my grandfather. And isn't it weird that they say it skips a generation? Mm-hmm. He was one who would write songs, and he'd play me his songs, and they were fun songs, and they were goofy songs like Ogden Nash put to music or something like that. And that's probably what gave me this idea, well, maybe I could be a little bit like Grandpa. And I think it started, as far as the writing and that sort of thing, that started at a young age. Also, my mother raising me in the 60s, and my mother, we were only 18 years apart, 18 or 19 years apart. Okay. So, close in age, and she always had music on. She was always listening to Simon and Garfunkel, the Beatles, that's, whatever was popular at the time in the late 60s. And so with music on all the time and my grandfather, I started listening to music, and not so much the music as much as the words. Yeah. And I enjoyed that, and I wanted to be like that. The inspiration from Paul Simon or from the Beatles or Neil Diamond, things like that. So at a really early age, I just started writing things. And then once in school, when I was able to take writing classes and keep a journal and do creative writing courses in public school, and I enjoyed it.
You attracted to that.
Yeah. And also I would try it out with relatives. My mom was my biggest fan. She's like, "Oh, that's good." And I would go back, and I did a show about a year ago where, you try to mix things up, and I decided to do a chronological show, like read 2 pieces from the 70s, 2 pieces from the 80s, 2 pieces from the 90s. That's how I was doing the show. And I'm reading the what I wrote, in the 70s. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I said to my wife, I said to Janet, I said, I can either read it as it is, or I said, I can rewrite it. And she said, why don't you just not read it at all? and that's because, again, time and place. Mm-hmm. She's funny. We've been together since 82. And she's good because she doesn't pull any punches. Mm-hmm. So with the writing, a lot of times I'll be halfway through writing something, and I'm ruminating over it, and I'll say, "Hey," I said, "can I read you this?" And I read everything to her before it gets to the point where it's finished. And I'll read her something, and half the time she'll say, "You've written that before." And I'll say, "I've been writing for 50 years. There's going to be some kind of repetition here." And she goes, "No, but that's the same thing." I said, "Nobody ever heard it back in 1983. So I said, I can use it." She said, "Stealing from yourself again."
She'll give you her honest opinions on that.
Oh, there's no question about that. No question.
But I wanted to ask about your father,
Mhm.
and just for you as a child growing up with your father as a MLB player.
Right.
Uh, how was that for you? Getting to you got to travel, and did you
Right.
get to go to a lot of games?
Yeah, fortunately, when you're a kid, you've got a curfew, so you're not out late. Wrigley Field, the home of the Cubs, didn't have lights. So all of their home games were day games.
Oh,
So that made life easy, right?
yeah.
That made life easy as far as that's concerned. So just a snapshot of my regular year.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm in school in North Jersey in Parsippany, and we're going to school, and my father would go to spring training in February. Easy to remember. My parents' anniversary was February 18th, and my dad was never with my mother for their anniversary. But right around that time, you would have like the midwinter break or the recess or whatever it is. And back then, you had, let's say, 2, 3, or 4 day weekends when they celebrated George Washington's birthday and Lincoln's birthday at different weeks instead of rolling it all together.
Mhm.
So that was our opportunity. My father would be at spring training. Let's take the Cubs, for example. So he'd be in Scottsdale, Arizona. So my mother would pack my 2 sisters and myself up, and we'd fly to Scottsdale for 2 weeks. And we could spend time with my father. This was the regular routine. My younger sister was born in 69. So before then, it was just my older sister and myself. Then we come back to Jersey, and school gets out, I don't know, middle of June, on the average. And my mother would pull us out of school at the end of May. And this is how things are different back then. So we'd pile into the station wagon and we would drive to Chicago. And my father had, an apartment or whatever for us. And then I would get enrolled in public school in Chicago or Minnesota, wherever he was playing at the time. I get enrolled into public school, and I would go the last 3 or 4 weeks of school in a completely different state.
Wow.
But he didn't move around a lot in his career. So you'd end up seeing people that you had seen the year before, kind of like that summer time with the kids in Orient, right?
Yes.
So, and also being able to go the last 3 weeks of school, it also enabled me to get on the Little League team because they did summer Little League. So, and it's funny, kids, you talk about being the son of a Major League Baseball player. It was my dad's job. And it was hard to explain this, but that's all I knew. I grew up with that. I grew up going to baseball games. My father's roommate when he was on the road was his catcher, Randy Hundley. Randy's son Todd and I became good friends because our dads were roommates, so we'd go to the ball games together. And if I didn't have a little league game or something like that, I'd go to the ballpark with Todd and my father and Randy. It was no different with the kids. I was a little bit older when we were doing this in Minnesota, but my father in certain areas, I mean, there were 3 or 4 years, he was a rock star. In the years when the Cubs were competitive and he was a 20-game winner, and all that. So, but I didn't see it because that would mainly happen. It would mainly happen if that we went out to a restaurant or something like that, and you're in Chicago. People know him because they see him on television or they listen to him on the radio or they're coming to the games. They're like, oh my gosh, that's Bill Hands. To me, he was dad, and it was his job. I probably appreciated what he did more after he passed away in 2017. Because before then, he was so humble. Mm-hmm. And people would come in to see him and they'd want to talk. And he would talk. They'd ask him questions and he'd do that. But I never really recognized the magnitude of him as a professional athlete until later. Yes. And there seems to be almost a theme with everything, like the friends that I met coming out to Orient. You don't think about it until later, and you just kind of did it. So that's so that was kind of cool. There were I guess there were probably perks as the offspring of a professional ball player. But it's just, without being snotty, I guess it's just kind of what I expected. That was the lifestyle I grew up in. And I didn't know any different. Mm-hmm. Great story. My best friend in New Jersey's dad was an electrical engineer. And after school, we'd go to one of the other's houses. I wanted to go to his house. Because he had, LED lights had just come into play. It was in the 70s, little red lights and stuff. And he had LED lights and dry-cell batteries, wires and bells and lights and things on a big table in his basement. And we could solder stuff and we could make lights go and bells go off and this and that. And that's what I wanted to do. And he'd want to go to my house because I had catcher's gear and I had bats, balls, and helmets and this and that. And I'm like, well, I could do that anytime. I don't want to do that. So I think it's, again, remember I told you with Orient with the kids, I wanted to be that person. And I think that's normal. I think that's a normal thing. You want to be the person that has what you don't have. Mm-hmm. And then maybe years later, as we're reflecting back, I did all right having what I had and going through what I went through. And so what, I didn't go down to the Jersey Shore, but I did this and they didn't. So everyone's lifestyle is different. And I think everyone's story is special as well.
Yes. But for your father, were there any stories that he shared with you that you feel were that stood out to you growing up? Whether it was about baseball.
Yeah. So I think even at a young age, I saw this. I think probably one of the greatest things about baseball, and I saw this with him, I was able to be in the clubhouse before and after the games up until 71, and things changed. And I had, generally where you're going to school as a young kid, you're somewhat insulated from different cultures, different ethnic backgrounds, different monetary backgrounds, the whole socioeconomic thing. And in baseball, which is, I'm sure, other sports too, but this is what I know about, I interacted from a young age with people from Cuba, people from Puerto Rico, people from Canada, white people, black people, people of color. And I was taught that, they were a family. Mm-hmm. And what a great experience, growing up in a clubhouse with these people at a young age and realizing that guy's the same as me, or he's the same as my dad.
Yeah.
So stories, I don't think my father shared personal stories with me, there were a couple of dicey times. It was the late 60s, and Chicago was a tough place with racial tension, different riots and things like that. I met so many people. There were so many characters, things that stuck in my head. Joe Pepitone, who had been with the Yankees, got traded, and he ended up with the Cubs. And he's in the clubhouse. You know, more often than not, people don't have clothes on in a clubhouse, and or they just have a towel on. And I saw this scar on Pepe's stomach, and I said to him, and here's the other thing too. It wasn't because you're a family. It wasn't Mr. Pepitone. You know, Leo DeRocher was Mr. DeRocher, but you know, it was Pepe, because we're all. It's a level playing field, right? The rock stars and the guy who's tuning the guitar, they're on the same stage. They're on the same platform. And I said to Pepe, how did you get that, scar on your stomach? And I'm like, I don't know, man, I'm like 10 years old, right? And he said, I got shot. And I thought that was funny. I was like, oh, really? He says, yeah. And he turns around. He says, you want to see where it came out the back? He showed me the scar on the back of him. And I was like, okay. So we're driving home from the ballpark that night. And I asked my father about it. And he just told me, he said, there's a lot you don't know. He says, there's a lot you don't have to know. He taught me respect for all people. He taught me to be proud of myself. He said, if you're going to dig ditches, he said, be the best ditch digger that there is. He said, there's nothing, there is no job that is beneath you if you're doing the best you can. So he had pride in what he did, and I was proud of him. As far as the stories, some stories I could tell, but we couldn't record.
What was the 69 season?
The 69 season. So I was, it was crazy. It was really crazy. Todd and I would go to the ball games. Ball game started at 1:15. We'd go in with our dads around 11 o'clock, 11:30, and we'd hang out. We'd shag flies and stuff during batting practice. We'd go back into the clubhouse. The ball players would shower and put on their uniforms for the game. And we were bored, so we would go outside of the stadium. And this is a funny story. We go outside of the stadium, but we'd have to wait for the will call window to open. So here we are, these two young kids in the middle of Chicago, but it was different, and they all knew us. And once the will call window would open, we could get our tickets and we could go back inside. Not going on the field or anything like that. So, of course, we had box seats right behind the dugout. And that was my favorite place because I could put my Coke and my peanuts and stuff right on top of the dugout. And then as the guys came out of the dugout, I could say, hey, Pepe, hey, Ernie, hey, Billy, hey, Fergie, like that. And then by the third or fourth inning, we were bored. So we'd go out to the bleachers. Now, the bleacher bums in Chicago, in the 60s, and especially 69, they wore hard helmets, yellow hard helmets, because they were doing shift work. So they could catch a 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock ball game, and whatever union they were working for, a lot of time, especially if you're doing road work, a lot of road work's done at night. So these guys had the opportunity to go to the ball games, and they were known as the bleacher bums. And they would be out there, they'd be wearing hard helmets. And it got so intense come August, they had megaphones And these were like the walkie-talkie megaphones where they're holding it. You got the coiled wire. You know what it's like. And they would sing. And we'd go out to to left field, and we had our favorite group of guys.
Yeah.
And we give them our box seat tickets because as a kid, it's more fun to be out in the bleachers.
Yeah.
So they would wait for us to come out in the fourth or fifth inning. They'd say, "Hey, Billy, hey, Todd, how are you?" "Oh, we're great." Mm-hmm. And they say, "You got tickets today?" And we're like, "Sure, here." Can we give them the box seat tickets? And then next thing you know, the bleacher bums are down the third base line. and they weren't out there. That was fun. We became friends with the guy who operated the scoreboard. That's a manual scoreboard. So we could go inside the scoreboard. And again, everyone knew us. And we're just kids, so we're not doing any harm. And we go into the scoreboard, and we were allowed to, he'd like, "Okay, put a 0 up." And we'd put up the 0 that you'd see from the stands at the bottom of the 7th inning or whatever it was. It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of excitement. And that whole community there really banded together. Everybody was a Cub fan. Everybody was a Cub fan, and they knew all the players. And the Chicago Cubs that year recorded a record. They recorded an album with their chant songs and things like that. And Ron Santo, after a win, would go running down, the third base line, the clubhouse door for the home team. You didn't get to the clubhouse from the dugout. The door was all the way down in the corner by left field. So you couldn't, like you see it all the time now, okay, well, such and such got thrown out of the game. They go down the tunnel and they're in the clubhouse. You can't do that at Wrigley down the third base line. You'd have to walk to get to the clubhouse, right? And Santo, at the end of those games, he'd run down the line toward the clubhouse, and he'd jump up and he'd click his heels. And they'd sing, "Hey, hey, holy mackerel." No doubt about it, the Cubs are on their way.
Wow.
Yeah. See, it's funny. I don't think about those things unless I'm prompted. It's not like that's history, but it's good memories.
Yeah.
It's good memories. We didn't get in any trouble. And I never felt, sometimes now I'll be in certain areas, maybe going to a show or something like that. I'm a little edgy, maybe not feeling comfortable as to where I am. Mm-hmm. I never had that feeling there. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was because I was a kid and I was too dumb. But maybe it was just that everybody was on the same page. We all had the same goal, and that was for the Cubs to win the World Series.
Yes.
It didn't think it would take until 2016 for that to happen. But
yeah. And also, while your time in high school, were you a ball player as well in high school? Did you play baseball at all?
I did. So, it's different out here on the Twin Forks as far as the student body and the number of people you have. And that's always been a challenge in small communities as far as being able to field a team, whether it's baseball or football, basketball. There are certain sports always seem to have no problems. But then when you had the addition, soccer started to become popular here in the States in the mid-'70s. People like Pele, that sort of thing. All of a sudden, kids are playing soccer or lacrosse, which right around 1980, that also took. And I looked at those two sports. They took baseball players away from the teams, and that made it more difficult to field teams. But the school I went to was what I would call the stereotypical hierarchy for sports. You had the freshman team, and then you had the junior varsity team, and then you had the varsity team, and that went through all the different sports, whether it was baseball, basketball, football. It was just, like I said, the stereotypical, you open up a book in the library as far as sports in high school. We were just like that. So the possibility of lettering in a varsity sport for 4 years was probably difficult, even if you were really a good ball player, because you still had to you may be able to skip junior varsity and as a 10th grader go right to varsity, depending on how good the team was. I played baseball, and I was good. I wasn't great. I mean, I was good for high school. I don't think I was going to go pro, and but I got lucky, and I've been lucky with a lot of things in life. So I was playing freshman baseball, and I was playing second base, and the varsity baseball team had gotten into the state finals, which was, pretty good feat. And oftentimes, if a team is going on to postseason play, county finals or state finals, county and then state, they can carry more people on the roster. And usually by that point in time, the JV team, their season is done before the varsity team. And they'll bring up certain JV players, so they've got a backup. The second baseman on the JV team had gotten hurt. They didn't have a backup. Not that they were going to use me, but they didn't have depth on the bench for second base. So as a freshman, I had the opportunity to travel with the varsity team during the state finals. And the neat thing was, I was the most surprised person. That gave me a letter. And then I continued with baseball and skipped JV because I had already had that varsity experience, and fortunate enough, to letter 4 years with that. But I got better and better because, if you've got an older brother and he and his buddies are playing a game of pickup baseball or football, and you're the little kid, you tag along, and you're not up to their standards, but that makes you better because you try to achieve more. And that's what helped me. So by the end of, by my senior year, I had gotten, county awards and that sort of thing. And I had the opportunity to go to Rutgers, which was a state school, on a baseball scholarship.
Wow.
Which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And this was one of those father-son talks. I didn't turn to my father that often. He was a great daddy, but I wasn't as comfortable. He wasn't a lovey-dovey. He was more of a businessman. So maybe father-son was a business relationship. But I turned to him, and I had gotten a writing scholarship to Southampton College, and I had also gotten a writing scholarship to Emerson in Boston, and I had the baseball scholarship at Rutgers. And this is my father's advice to his son. So we're talking one day, and I said, Dad, I don't know what to do. And he said, well, and he knew my talent, but more than that, he knew that being a professional athlete is not an easy life, especially for family people.
Yes.
The time apart, the stress that it puts on relationships, that whole thing. And he did his dream, and he did what he wanted to do. And I don't think he wanted me to live his dream, because he knows how difficult it was for my mother and for the kids.
Yes.
So his words of advice to me. Now, the second baseman for the Cubs was a gentleman named Glenn Beckert. Okay. And the only reason I'm telling you that is he knew about my writing. My father knew about my writing skills, and he knew how I idolized his dad, my grandfather, as far as being a thespian and, a performer. And he turned to me and he said, I think you've got a better chance of being the next Edgar Allan Poe than the next Glenn Beckert. I'll never forget him telling me that. And, for a kid who's 17, that's a little bit like, so you think I stink at baseball, huh? But I think his thought more so was, get your college education, and then, go from there.
Yes.
So that pretty much took care of my career in baseball. Yeah. I played softball afterwards, intramural in college.
No, but that's
the glory days of the beer leagues. But as far as baseball, yeah, he was probably right.
Or maybe he saw that deep down he might have thought you were really interested in the writing too, maybe.
Yeah, but also, he after he retired from baseball, my mother pushed him to coach us kids for what they called senior league. That was the 13, 14, and 15-year-olds. And she said, Bill, all the other dads had done this for the kids. And she said, I think it's your turn. And again, something I found out later. And he ended up doing it. He was the coach for our team. And he knew he could identify talent, even in a 13 or 14-year-old kid. And we won the championship all 3 years that he coached. And it was at that point in time I realized that sometimes you'll have a team that doesn't have the best players. You know how everybody blames the manager? Mm-hmm. The Mets are doing poorly. They're not producing. And everybody gets on the manager. Mm-hmm. And people who don't know better say, well, he's not the guy who's out there, fielding and batting. But the manager of a team does so much, and he can make things happen, and he can make the right moves. And that's what he did for us. And I don't think that he saw that I had that talent. And I respected him for that. I'm not upset because, hey, again, life takes weird turns. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy. Don't look back. Mm-hmm. Not the what could have beens and things like that. Yes. It's what you did, man. Yes. And it's pretty good. Mm-hmm. And it could always be worse. Mm-hmm. It could always be worse.
Yes. What did you end up going to Southampton? Or
I did.
Okay.
A weird thing. Remember, don't forget back in the 70s when you were going to see your advisor or whatever, there were no computers or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And your advisor would break out that big book that looks like something from Dumbledore or something like that. Yeah. Like that. And you'd go through it and you're looking at pictures of Rutgers, or pictures of Southampton, or pictures in Boston. And I was concerned about Rutgers because of the size of the school. That scared me. Mm-hmm. And also, if I went to Rutgers, they wanted me to play fall and spring ball the first year I got there. And I thought that would be a lot. And it scared me. Southampton, I was familiar with from my summers coming out to Orient.
Yes.
And it was a place I always wanted to be. Remember, I want to be like him. And now I'm thinking I could go to school in Southampton. I could still work at the gas station on weekends or vacations for a little extra pocket money, and I could stay on campus at Southampton so I could be involved in intramural sports or the radio station or writing and this and that. It was the greatest 4 years of my life. I met my wife my freshman year. I got involved in everything. And weekends, if there wasn't something going on, or holidays, I was back in Orient working at the gas station.
Yes.
Never went to Emerson until 30 years later.
Wow.
My daughter was, my older daughter was at the Naval Academy, and one of the things she had to do was she brought a ship from Annapolis to Boston, and we decided, let's go to Boston and meet her there because, you know, she'll have time off on the weekend. So we go to Boston and we're walking around the green and, you know, and that sort of thing. And there's Emerson College. So, and I love Boston.
Yeah.
I love it. So I said to my wife, so let's go check out Emerson. Right. And, if, again, funny things, if I had gone and checked out Emerson back in 1980, I would have gone there instead of Southampton.
Just with Boston and everything combined.
And I liked the school.
Yes.
And thank goodness I didn't.
You might not have ended up back here.
I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. Wouldn't be married to the person I've been with for, 100 years. There's a joke, people say to me, Billy, how long have you been with Janet? I said, since dirt. and I don't feel like I'm that old. But everybody, even if they don't know Janet, they know Janet because, like you and I talking right now, I won't tell you my wife and then say I'll just say Janet.
Yeah.
Because it's been Billy and Janet since 82.
Yes.
And that's the way it is. I'll do a show, and I'll say something about a piece that I'm going to do, and I'll just say to people, so I was saying to Janet the other night, just like that. And
are they like, wait, who?
So that's fun. So yeah, so Southampton it was.
Yes.
Southampton it was. And met a lot of great writers, had a lot of fun, learned a lot, and I was still close to Orient. And that's how it went.
And was it that or even if you could give us a little history of the Orient Service Center?
Well, that's really pretty easy. There was a fella, Joe Andrade, who moved here from Portugal back in the 1920s. And Joe worked there was a place called Mount Pleasant in Orient. You can still see the pillars that say Mount Pleasant go up a hill, but there's nothing up there. And Joe started his first repair shop, Joe's Garage, upstairs of the barn of the buggy house at Mount Pleasant. And that was 1925. He and a friend of his then took a car and drove to California. And they turned around and they drove back. And Joe obviously, had to do things with the car along the way, both ways. And he had a knack for doing that. So when he got back to Orient, bought the piece of property where the gas station stands right now. And his granddaughter tells me, that's Jill, his granddaughter tells me that he had taken an old chicken coop and a scallop shack and a barn, put it all together, and started the first Joe's Garage, which is, Orient Service Station. Joe was an entrepreneur. You look at the old photos, he did everything. He rented bicycles. He rented out tennis courts, sold Breyer's ice cream, had penny candy, everything you think of with an old gas station. And he continued with that up until 1971, where I guess that was that crossroads or decision time between him and his son, also Joe. We call him Pete. And Pete had already been somewhat successful doing excavating and landscaping and that sort of thing. And he was more interested in that than running the garage. So Joe decided to sell it in 71, and he sold it to a fellow from Brooklyn who was a fire insurance adjuster for the borough of Brooklyn, but he was ready to slow his pace down. And he figured he would pump gas, he'd live upstairs above the gas station, and that would be his retirement years. And his son and his brother-in-law would run the repair shop, and he would take care of the gas end. So this is early 70s. When I started hanging out here, this is kind of a neat story, and it'll bounce back to the gas station, because there have only been 3 owners of the gas station, and I've worked for all 3. So wow. I feel like, so my best friend out here, John Andrade, Joe's grandson, he and I hung out and did everything together. I started working for them, cutting grass and doing landscaping and stuff. So I worked for Joe Andrade, the guy who made Joe's garage what my place is today. So I actually worked for him doing landscaping. It runs into difficulties sometimes, working for your best friend and his family, landscaping, because, I wanted to make money, but, I needed more than, a cheese sandwich and a bowl of soup. Yeah. And I understood that because we were just kids. So it was at that point in time I went and saw the people at the gas station to see if I could pump gas 3 days a week. And so then I started working, at the gas station then in 1980, just pumping gas, still in high school, last year of high school, and then through college. And then we ended up buying it. I had this vision of my father. Remember, when he played baseball, he needed to have a winter job. People weren't making the dough that they make now. So there weren't very many seasonal jobs, especially in the Northeast in the winter. So he drove an oil truck, delivered home heating fuel to people because they needed extra drivers because of the cold weather and the demand for the oil to be delivered. So he was doing that, and I called him up and I said, "Hey, I have an idea." And Janet and I had already pretty much decided we were going to stay here. And I said, "Why don't you start a small retail oil business out in Orient?" The fellow who had done it for years was a gentleman named Ike Edwards. And he was an icon out here. He was one of those kooky old guys, that type of deal. And Ike was pretty much done with it. And my father said, "Great, where am I going to put the truck? Park it in my driveway at the house?" I said, "No." I said, "Buy the gas station and park it there." And then that's how the third phase of Orient Service Center came into play. So he ended up spending his money on me. I mean, he put a lot of trust in me with that. And August of 87, we took over as the owners, even though I had been there since 80 for 7 years, through schooling and stuff. And then Dad and I we just pushed oil trucks, built the oil business, built the garage up, hired more people, added onto the back of the garage. And we worked side by side for 30 years, from 87 until 17. It was like Groundhog Day every day. He was in before me. I'd come in. He'd be reading the sports page, drinking a cup of coffee, and smoking his Winston. And I'd come in and do paperwork, and we'd sit like you and I are sitting right now. Mm-hmm. And we'd talk, or maybe we wouldn't talk. And those mornings, I finally realized, remember how many times we spoke about you don't realize what you're doing until years later when you look back.
Yes.
So the last year that we were doing that, those morning sit-downs, I recognized it at that time of what we had. Mm-hmm. And I used to tell people, I said, you know how great it is, that I'm sitting here with my father for 30 years. And I'm so happy that I recognized that before he died. Mm-hmm. And we would talk about it. And I'd have business questions, at the gas station. Hey, I need a new tire machine, Dad. And I would struggle with, if I should spend this money or this, that, or this, that. And I was like, what do you think? And he'd just say to me, he said, you know what you need? You're going to do what you want to do anyway. So for almost 100 years, we've only had 3 owners of the place. Wow. And I've worked for all 3 if I count myself. Yes. And that's kind of cool. Yes. That's kind of cool. Kind of makes me an icon of some sort, at least with Orient Service Center, if nothing else.
But you had mentioned that you said you decided that you wanted to stay out here on the east end of the North Fork, because did you work a bit in the city or?
Yeah, but it was short lived, yes. And that's not my type of lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And my wife and I, we weren't married at the time. Mm-hmm. She's got education in environmental biology, and I had my writing degrees, mm-hmm. And we weren't planning on staying in Orient. And this was before I came up with the idea of trying to sell it to my father for his financial backing. Mm-hmm. So this was 86, I guess. And Janet her 4-year degree took 5 years because of the sciences mm-hmm. and the amount of work that it was. So while she's finishing up, we're trying to decide what we're going to do. And she's from Delaware, and we'd visited her parents and friends numerous times in Delaware, liked the area, and there were opportunities for both of us, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia area, and that was our idea. Nothing had quite gelled yet, and I was still working at the gas station. And the one fellow from Brooklyn who had bought it back in 71, he had passed away, and his son was running it, who was a friend, but he also had lost his giddy up with the shop, mainly losing his father. So Janet had worked with animals, always loved animals, and she ended up getting a job on Plum Island at the old 257 building, working with animals, animal handler, and that sort of thing. And I figured, you know what? I'll just hold pat and I'll keep working at the gas station. The guy needs me because his father's no longer with him. And, I can just have a good time, with my, with dirt bikes and boat and the truck and playing softball. And everything I always said, boy, I'd like to do that. And then the idea of buying the gas station. And Janet left there and started working for the local animal hospital, kept her with animals, which she loved. And that's how, and then when my father okayed it, Janet was, okay, she said, so you're going to stick me in this place for the rest of my life. And occasionally I do get blamed, but I think she's happy with the community, and we raised 3 kids here, and the lifestyle, and it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
And I was curious, through the 70s or 80s, what did you think of Greenport at that time?
Wow.
Because it was kind of going through a transition.
Oh, big time. Mm-hmm. Big time. So Greenport had gotten to a point in the 70s, late 70s, where, pick my words carefully because I love Greenport. It was a rundown fishing village. Not all of the stores were occupied on Main Street or Front Street. From a financial standpoint, a lot of homes were in disrepair. It was dark. But it was our town.
Yeah.
And and something had to happen, right? It had to go one way or the other. And it was funny because in the early 80s, there were certain people with vision of building a restaurant on the water, or trying to attract a different group of people, more like the Hamptons type of deal. And people are reluctant to change, right? And they're also concerned too, because I don't want Greenport, they'd say, I don't want Greenport to be like Southampton or East Hampton. We don't want that.
Yes.
We're happy with our quaint village and the quietness, but it wasn't bringing money in. It wasn't a destination. Yeah, if you were fishing, but there are only so many people who fish. At that time, Dave Capel became mayor in Greenport, and Dave had this vision, and it's a blessing and a curse. He started it with developing Mitchell Park. Mitchell's restaurant had burned down. That used to, stand there. And, Dave had this idea. And a lot of people didn't care for it. Dave Capel was known for real estate, but also a smart businessman and a friend. And he wound up slowly making this transformation. And you see how we are now. It's always been this way in small communities. This is a huge change from 1980. Things were smaller 40 years ago. And what I mean by saying smaller is it wasn't that. It's a longer distance right now for me to travel from Orient to Greenport. But mileage-wise, it's the same, but it's different.
Yeah.
I think that's because Orient, East Marion, Greenport, Southold, it all just blended together, like it was one hamlet. Yeah. Now there's such a difference between Orient, contrast. East Marion, Greenport, Southold. Are we better for it? In a lot of ways, yeah. Like I said, right at the beginning when we were talking, change is good. You have to have change. You can't just you can't remain stagnant because you don't have generational workers on the farm, right? Generational workers at the gas station, as baymen. It's different. If you don't bend, you're going to break. I'm not going to get political and say, well, this should be done, this should be done, this should be done. No, we're just looking at it we're just looking from the outside. We're looking in, right? We're just looking at Greenport as you see it right now. and it can't stay the same. And what we have right now, it's not going to be like this 40 years from now. It's just the way it is.
Yes.
Just the way it is. This transformation then very slowly and almost underground, the arts community that came into Greenport following this, because it started to attract different people. And the local people in Orient now, I came up with this over the summer. What is a local person? Right? Because you'll hear people say, oh yeah, I'm a local. And so what is the criteria? I mean, I always used to say, my history here since the late 60s and how I came to Orient. And I always used to say, well, I'm not a local. I was adopted. My children are local. They were born here, but I'm not. And the local people would say to me, but Billy, you're a local. And I started to think, well, wait a minute, what defines a local? Is it the amount of time? Is it a business in the community? Because there are people who have businesses in the communities that just aren't local because they don't play by those values, right? So I came up with, okay, so there's a difference between being local and being native.
Yeah.
How about that, right? So the Andrades, the gas station and all, they're natives. But I'm local as a member of the community, as somebody who interacts in the community, volunteers time on a board, whether it's the Board of Education, whether it's the beach, whether, it's Peconic Land Trust, whether it's working with the railroad, Joe Cheraposh, the Joe Cherry Choo Choo. Somebody who is not a native but moves here and gets involved with that makes them local because they're doing it for the community. And that's super important. Greenport is good. Greenport's in good shape. You can always pick on things. My daughter's famous for saying, haters gonna hate. Don't look for the hate. Look for the good. Because just help it along the way a little bit.
Yes. But you've seen with your business out here, has that gotten busier even since the 90s or 2000s, and then even after COVID?
Yeah. So, I look at my business is two things. There's the repair work, and then, of course, is the traffic, yes. Right? And the ironic thing is the gasoline sales out in Orient are probably half of what they were in 1982.
Okay.
And that has everything to do with the vehicles on the road,
yes. Right?
In the early 80s, you still had cars from the middle 70s, the big gas hogs. Now, say you live in Greenport and you always get gas at XYZ station, and you're going to go to Boston for the weekend. Oh, you gas your car up at your regular station, you hop the ferry, you drive to Boston, you drive around a little bit while you're there, and you drive back. You come back, you still have half a tank of gas. Back then, repair-wise, we've had to, it's not the gas station from 1950 with the way things have progressed. And again, you either stay in that time or you pump money and education into your infrastructure. And that's what we've done at this 100-year-old gas station. We've got trained guys, trained technicians there, and they'll tell me, Billy, we need this, we need that. A lot more cars to repair. And the thing a lot of people don't notice is for the additional number of people and number of cars that are in the area, there aren't any new repair shops.
Yes.
You know what I
know.
mean? Right?
Yeah.
So let's say there's a half a dozen repair shops from Orient to Southold. And the community and the car population has increased so much, there's still a half a dozen repair shops. That hasn't changed.
Yes.
It's the same buildings, maybe different people over the years, but everybody knows where the repair shops are. And there aren't more. Do you know, jumping back to the way things change? So in the 50s, there was where the Candyman is right now in Orient. There was a gas station there. There was a Tidal station. And then, of course, there was Joe's Garage. The Tidal had gasoline. Half a mile east, you had Joe's Garage with gasoline. At the foot of Browns Hills on the south side of the road was a place called The Hut. And it was like a little diner or something. They had gas pumps there. And out at the point at the entrance to the state park, right before the marina wasn't there then, there were gas pumps there. So in 1950, you had 4 places, not counting the farms that obviously had fuel. You had 4 places, a 3.5-mile stretch that would sell gas. Because of, the cars and what you had
at that time.
And but repair shop wise, yeah, it's busy. It's busy. And again, a blessing and a curse, right? You do what you can do. You try to do what you can do. You try to be the best at what you're doing. It's not necessarily for everybody. Can't always meet the needs of everyone. But yeah, there's been a huge influx and more people coming to my repair shop west, not because we're so good, but because there are only so many places. And maybe we are good, but, it needs something done. Oh, this shop can't do it for 4 days. This one can't do it for 3 days. Oh, Billy's shop can do it in 2 days. I'll go out to Orient. So that's the difference you're seeing too. So yeah, a lot more people. COVID was interesting, right? First of all, just from all of us thinking and not knowing, is this it for us? We didn't know, right? Yes. As we know, as far as existence, is this going to take us out? We didn't know because they didn't know, the people that we counted on to tell us. They didn't have an answer. And then what COVID did was it forced people to learn to work from home. And older people, younger people, they adapt to things faster because technology moves so quickly. They've grown up in a culture that moves that quickly. Old people like me, it doesn't go that fast. But you've learned COVID enabled people to learn how to FaceTime, how to get on a Zoom platform. If it weren't for what happened, beginning in that spring of 2020, you'd still have a lot of people that wouldn't know how to FaceTime or jump onto a Zoom platform or something like that. So those people now that work completely remotely, or maybe have to go into their brick and mortar establishment once a week or 2 days a week just so they can show their face. You've got more people that don't have to be residing in an area that's congested, and that puts them in paradise, also known as the North Fork of Long Island. And that brings more cars.
Yes.
And it brings different people too. And it enables you to interact with people. See, I look for the good in things. There are people that everybody brings something to the table, right? You and I talking beforehand. about the storm catastrophe when you were in New Orleans with your family, and it just, if it were 40 years ago, you and I wouldn't have met,
Yes.
and I wouldn't have found out about you. I mean, you're doing this to find out about me and about the community and how things have changed, but we wouldn't have met, and now we have, and that's what unfortunately, COVID, but that's brought a lot of people from a lot of different. It's the baseball team. It's the locker room. It's like everything is coming full circle. You've got different cultures. You've got people from different backgrounds, and we're on the same ball team, and we're learning from each other, and we're learning things that otherwise we never would have found out. And that's really cool.
Yes.
That's really cool.
Oh, definitely. And
I just thought of that. I have to write that down.
Yeah, that's good. But I also wanted to touch on your writing and art, because you continue to have the service station.
Right.
But over that time, did you continue to be creative and write?
Yeah.
And involve in the art scene here?
Yeah, it was a lot smaller. Like I said, back in the everybody in the small community knew. Everybody's background to some degree. They knew that I wrote. They may not have known what I wrote. Maybe I would submit a poem to the Suffolk Times. The Suffolk Times used to print poetry back around 1980 in their weekly paper. And everybody didn't know what I did, but knew about the myth, let's say. And again, so there were people in the community, and I've been so fortunate, and at times lucky, but I think fortunate is right. And in the Oyster Ponds community, annually, there were members of the Historical Society or the Orient Community Activities, and they would do a winter reading. And it wasn't always poetry. It was offspring from original people in the community, let's say from the 1800s, and they would read from a diary, or they would tell stories about what their grandfather or their great-grandmother told them. And that would go down like in February when things were quiet, there was nothing going on, and we'd meet either at the old schoolhouse or at Pocatuck Hall. And people instrumental in this, Linton Duell was really, he was a curator of this. And in the writing group, a lady named Anne Mackay, who also would get the handful, that was it, of the artists, whether it was visual or musical or verbal artists. And that's how it went. And that went on and I was invited to partake in this, read a few things, maybe 3 things, something like that. But it's also neat too, because as a writer or as an artist, just to get things out there to people. Hey, this is what I do. Check it out. Tell me if you like it. If you don't tell me. And that went on for a few years. And I started reading a little more and more, let's say, downstairs here at Floyd Memorial, or, not so much coffee houses, but libraries and that sort of thing. And I'm just highlighting people who really helped me along the way. Mm-hmm. There was a lady named Paula Schengold, and Paula had heard about me and had heard from other people about this. And at these different readings that I was doing, these small things, usually in the winter, I'd have people ask me, hey, is there some place where I can get your work? And so I would show my age. I would Xerox, maybe a half a dozen pieces, and I would hand them out. but I didn't have a book. I didn't have something under wraps. So Paula invited me one day to a luncheon called Catch a Rising Star. And it would have a notable person there, maybe somebody who had just published a coffee table book or had done something. And she invited me to this as one of the other two people at the Catch a Rising Star. And I'm thinking, you want me? So we show up, and that was at the Soundview. And afterwards, people are talking to me about my writing and what I did and this and that. And I'm thinking, he's the guy with the published book over there, and they liked it. And a week later, Hazel Kahn, who had been in radio, got a hold of me, and she wanted to do a recording like this for her show, for an NPR show. So I went to her studio in Mattituck, and I recorded something. And I started to think, so I got a hold of Anne Mackay, who started this whole thing with me. And she had done a number of self-published chapbooks and things like that. And my thinking was, just get something between the pages that was available to people. And I called her up and I said, I need your help. And she said, what is it? I said, I need to put a book together. And she guided me through the first book that I did. She took me to the paper store, and she explained paper stock to me, and she explained to me the print and how you want it bright but not bold, and how you want the paper made of this. And she knew the paper from all the books she had done. Mm-hmm. And then following that, then things took off. I started working with an improv group called the Hidden City Orchestra, that was like 30 years ago that started. And the brains and the musical director and writer for the music, George Cork Mall, he and I got very close, and we worked together for 30 years, doing improv shows, and all over. The next thing you know, we're all over the place. We're doing libraries up in Middle Island and this and that. And did another book. And but life, I've always tried to stay focused. I mean, the one thing is work, is the gas station. And but I still do things, and maybe not as much as I used to. But the Anne Mackay was the huge thing, and annually there is the Anne Mackay Song Swap in Orient at Pocatuck Hall, and that's where different local groups, kids from the community, which is always fun because that's what it's about. It's a community thing. Mm-hmm. I know everybody's seen the Mudflats.
Yes.
And they're wonderful community members, all of them. And they would play there again, like a baseball team. You're all on the same team. And I've had the opportunity to do spoken word with music over the last 3 years. And that's something now that I look forward to. I'll start to think about it now, and I know it's not going to be until March. Yes. Just to see, when I say to the musicians that I work with this, say, can we top last year? What do you want to do? How do you want to do it?
Yes.
I'd love to be an artist for pay. Mm-hmm. And just work on my art. But I've created my own monster as a go-to person in the community, not just with car repair, but with the beaches or with the school or with just the person coming in and saying, hey, Billy, what do you know about this? Mm-hmm. And we'll be talking about, I don't know what Suffolk County Water Authority is proposing to do, or who's running for this position in Southold Town, or, question about the mayor. They come and see me, the mechanic that writes poetry that couldn't make it playing baseball. But it's just, that's the community.
Yes.
That's the community. And I don't know if I am going to continue, to use the gas station after 45 years as my platform, as my soapbox. I don't foresee, a fourth owner anytime soon for Joe's Garage or Orient Service Center. My son is 32. He works there. He can handle things when I'm not there, whether it be the ever-increasing doctor's appointments, or just getting away. Janet and I, ever since we were kids, we would go to the Florida Keys. We just finally got ourselves to a point where we bought a small house in the Keys.
Wow.
And I'd like to spend more time there. Orient's my home. People who have gotten wind of this ask me if I'm moving. I'm like, no, man, I'm not moving. This is my place. My house is here. I said, everyone just needs a little getaway. Yeah. And as you get older, you start to think, you know what? I can still do for the community. I can still interact. But let me broaden things in an ever-changing world a little bit while I can still move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I gotta make it sound like I'm 100 years old.
No, but that's good, even with your son working there. And
right. So that actually, now that kind of torpedoes my theory that I've been working on, during this conversation. It really puts where I said, you don't have the generational businesses in small towns like you used to. Danny Latham Farms is fortunate enough where one of his daughters, Erin, is taking over the reins, and she and her husband, who is a local doctor, Dr. Stanton, orthopedics. So Danny is fortunate to have them here, and they have children. Mm-hmm. So maybe, that type of generational family, maybe it's
coming back.
Or at least not everybody's going, because there are so few of us.
Yes.
The local farms and the local gas stations or repair shops. Mm-hmm. Maybe there is hope. I'm kidding. But everything changes.
Yes.
Everything changes. Yeah. And
you can miss, sometimes I like to ask people if they miss anything about the way it used to be, but there's obviously, you probably can find things here and there, but it's just kind of part of the
It's part of the gig,
forward.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of the gig. And there are people that are still, all they want to do is talk about 1975 and how it was. That's great. That's why God made photo albums.
Yes.
Look at the pictures. But everything changes. Mm-hmm. You can remain in that time and place, and that's fine. And if you're happy with that, great. But I just think there's so much more to do. Mm-hmm. But that's me. Like I said, there are people that, do I miss things from then? Let's talk about the trade-off. Traffic, right? Mm-hmm. Do I miss the open roads? Yes. Do I miss fewer boats on the water? Yeah. But on the other hand, if there are more boats on the water, or more cars, there are more people. Everything comes down to money, right? Mm-hmm. There are more people visiting the farm stands. Mm-hmm. That independently owned repair shop. Mm-hmm. The small country store, things like that. The sustainability of that from a closed community where you close the borders type of deal. Yeah, you can survive, but maybe not thrive. Don't we always want better?
Yes.
So, yeah, that's a bitch.
Yeah.
It really is. It's too bad, but that's the way it is. And only complain about it if you can do something. Right? It's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback. But hey, I think we should do this. This would help the traffic. This would help the water pollution. All right, let's give that a shot. Then you do it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I miss the old ways.
Yeah.
I miss the winters. We don't have the winters.
The real winters.
Yeah, I miss the winters.
It seems so mild now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I miss, I miss playing ice hockey on the pond over at the cemetery.
Yes.
Yeah, that's too bad. So those are things I miss.
Yeah.
I miss my friends that I wanted to be like, when I was a kid. My three buddies that aren't with us anymore. Those are things I miss. But memories, great memories. And I'm not done making mememories. I'm not done. I'm not ready to fold my suitcase and say, okay, well, I did what I did. Now that's it. I haven't lit off the fireworks yet. I don't know what's coming, but that's a great part about life too.
Yes.
Is, I'm constantly meeting people. I'm constantly hearing stories. And maybe not as often as I used to, but I'm still writing stuff down in a journal. I'm still that 15-year-old kid that, wants to tell stories.
Yes.
So let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. You know what? And if you don't want to listen, okay, fine.
Yeah, it's still good to do.
Right.
It's important.
Yeah. But don't hate my happy.
Yeah.
Right? Don't hate my happy. I listen to kids. I like the things they say. Hey, don't hate my happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That might not be your thing, but it makes me happy. Okay. So be happy for me.
And I think I had one or two other things, but just I usually like to ask people, I feel like you have touched on it, but what do you enjoy most about living and working out here on the North Fork?
The people. The people.
Yes.
No question about it. That's easy. I mean, the best thing about my job is the people, and the worst thing about my job is the people. That's always been a joke. I mean, I feed off of people like any performer. If you're going to sing a song on a stage or read a poem or tap dance or anything like that, if you have an audience that is, and this isn't for vanity reasons, this is just what feeds you. And that's what really keeps me going. And that will be, as I slowly step away from my position there, at the gas station, that'll be the one thing that I'll remember the most is the people, and also learning not to make it about you, not to make it about me, but the people that you don't know that well, and you're talking to them because you want to learn something. If you want to make it about yourself, get a mirror and a microphone.
Yes.
But everyone has something to offer, and I enjoy that. But I do enjoy people coming in. Hey, Billy, what do you think about this? And at the same time, my finding out a customer just got back from Italy. and saying, tell me about Italy. How was the trip? But genuinely, genuinely about it. How was the trip? Yeah, that keeps me going. There are challenges like any business that are, behind the scenes that you have to deal with. Whether it's Suffolk County, whether it's tensions in the workplace, whether something not going right. That's all part of it. But everybody's got that no matter what they do, whether they're stocking shelves at the IGA, right, or fixing cars. It's not just what you see. It's not just opening that box and putting those Campbell soup cans out. There's something else. There's something else. But yeah, the people. The people's great. The community is great. It's just laughing, joking, but being serious at the same time, like Grandpa.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's the best part of it.
Definitely. And then I usually just like to ask at the end if there were any last minute things you'd like to say or discuss that we haven't touched on.
Yeah. So I mean, again, me being fortunate, everything we talked about, I tried to do snapshots because we could go in depth about growing up as a professional ball player's, kid. We could go in depth about what brought me to Orient, and more stories and more baseball stories, or my own personal life, meeting my wife, and how I ended up at the job, and kids, and the arts and the people who influenced me. Problem is, if we had, there's not enough tape on a reel-to-reel.
We'd run out.
Right, to do that. So I don't think so. If people get the opportunity to listen to this podcast and they're interested in a deeper dive, if you will, on some aspect, or even what I think about the climate, I would invite them to get a hold of me. Give me a buzz or stop down at the garage.
Yeah.
And say, hey, I was listening to your podcast. I got a question for you. So what was Pepitone like?
Yes.
Tell me more about Ferguson Jenkins. There's a lot.
Yes.
There's a lot. And I've done a lot, and I'm not done.
No.
And I'm not done.
Yes. No, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on the podcast today and share your story. Yeah. It was a real pleasure talking with you and then continuing to have this business out here too. So thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. And, one final thing, back to the podcast and what you're doing. You talk about the small community, and one thing we didn't touch on is the library, right? And that is so important in a day and age where people think everything's gone digital, and you can get things, at your fingertips online. Yet the library has metamorphosized, right? With the works of art that are, on the walls, the podcast that you're doing, a continued interest in the community. And I'd like to shout out to you and to anybody who's listening to this. Hey, if it's a rainy Sunday and you can't be down on the water, or, you don't have your wheels because something's broken, walk over to the library, go to the circulation desk, see somebody and say, hey, I've got 3 hours to burn. What do you think I should look at? And for the people listening, you might be surprised. You might find something you like that you didn't know you liked.
Yes.
So give it a shot.
We're always, like you said, adapting, but continuing to be a hub for the community.
That's right.
I think it's important to even interact in person here and there, just talking with people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So they put a face to the voice.
Yes.
Right. Oh, that's not AI. It's a real person.
It's a real person.
Cool. Well, Chris, I thank you much, man.
Thank
you very much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed episode 213 with Billy Hands. I want to thank you for listening to the Floyd Memorial Library podcast, and we'll see you next time.